thank you once again for joining us at the Biblical Perspective live on YouTube. We're continuing on our studies, and this week we're looking at another interesting topics. All these topics are really interesting, Ruth. But this week we're looking at the question, God's way or the highway? I mean, how fair really is this? And I mean, technically, we all know that this is the case, but when it actually comes to living our lives, we do want to sometimes often do our own thing, and
Yeah.
it's difficult to sometimes follow what God is calling us to do. And we wonder if there's an alternative way or if there's a different way of doing things. So, looking at the question, God's way or the highway, is this fair? We'll be able to address some of those questions that we have in relation to following God's will for our lives. If you are new to the biblical perspective, then please do subscribe and like this video. And also, don't forget that this is an interactive session. So if you do have any questions, then please leave them in the comment section on YouTube. I'll actually be here monitoring. Got my laptop here to monitor all your questions and comments, and to bring that to the discussion today. You're with myself, Colleen, and with Ruth and Pedro, and we'll be taking this Bible study with you today. Before we go any further, I'm going to start with a word of prayer. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this ability that we have to study your word once again. I pray that you'll be with those who are viewing the live with us today. And I pray, Lord, that they'll be blessed by this live, by the words that we speak, and by a further and better understanding of your word. Continue to be with us, lead us, and direct us. I ask these things in your precious and holy name, dear Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Colleen.
So yes, Ruth, God's way or the highway, there should really be, do you think there should be more choice? Everyone's wanting more choice this days in all types of ways. Choice over their bodies and what goes into their bodies, choice over where they live, choice over what they eat and what they do.
Yeah, it is, and it's a very interesting topic actually. God's way or the highway? Is this fair? Well, for me, when I think of the highway, when I think of highway, I think of the American mindset, and we just take the highway, and then there's songs that talk about highways and byways, but here it's saying it's God's highway, God's way, or the highway. Now, I want to know what this highway is, to be honest, because there's many different. I do, because we know God's way, but what's the highway? Is this fair? So, Pedro, I want to go straight to the topic because I'm very curious today about what's going to come out of this biblical perspective study. I want to go straight into I've got a question for you, right? How fair, how fair is it that God would not accept anything else than what he says for our lives? So, how fair is it that God would not accept anything else than what he says for our lives in connection with God's way or the highway? Is this fair?
What I hear from your question is whether God would not be a little bit selfish and dictatorial, in his dealings with human beings. And we don't like dictators, do we?
No, we don't.
No.
And if they are in power somewhere, we tolerate them for a time, but then we do all kinds of things to remove them from power, only to have another one.
And also,
but that's a different topic. Sorry.
But also, Pedro. History has showed us that that there's societies in where there's where a dictator leads are not happy societies. History has shown us that a whole load of heartache and pain
Yeah.
have been caused underneath worldly dictators.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And I would say I will reiterate what I just said. We tend to remove these people because they are the
Yes.
ones who tell us what to do, what not to do, where to go, what not, where not to go, and all sorts of aspects of our lives are being um, monitored and
Controlled.
directed by these people whom we believe are dictators. So your question seems to be in line with that sort of thinking regarding God, why he would
Yeah.
not accept anything else than what he says
Yeah.
um, for our lives. And sometimes even I've heard people saying, "Why is he threatening people?" Right? Well, why is he threatening people all the time? This is what you're gonna do. If you don't do it, this is what's gonna happen to you. And this is what you're
Yeah.
not gonna do. And if you do it, this is what's gonna happen to you. And he threatens people. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
there are different elements that need consideration in this. And the first element is the concept of authority.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question for you. Is the concept of authority much part of our existence on this planet?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Even if we don't realize it, it is.
Okay. So if we were to take some examples of the concept of authority, is there something called parental authority?
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
there something
Yes.
called yes? So is there something called governmental authority?
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Do we meet the concept of authority in the education system, such as the teacher's authority over the students or the pupil?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do.
So we could go on, but I think this has established that to a great extent, our society functions with the concept of authority. Now, my second question to you is this concept of authority needed? Do we need it?
It is absolutely necessary. Yes. It's needed, right? Because words like anarchy come out, words like vandalism, words like law, like disorder, all those negative riotous behavior, things like that come out. So there must be a opposite to that, which is authority to bring people into subjection to a way of thinking, whether you like it or not. It is necessary, but it's how it's done.
Okay, so
Um,
your first question was within the context of God's way or the highway. Is that fair? Your first question was why is it that can you say it again, please?
yes, yes, how fair is it that God would not accept anything else than what he says for our lives?
So, is there in this then, if we agree that the concept of authority is very much part of the human existence, and then
Yeah,
you went on to say, not only it is part of it, but it is actually a necessity.
yes, it is.
Um, and we talked about parental authority, we talked about
Mhm.
governmental authority, we talked
Yeah.
about authority in the education system, such as the authority
Mhm.
of the teacher in the classroom or outside of the classroom. My question now is what about divine authority? Do we need that?
Mm. Yes, we
If
do.
we d- if we didn't have divine, or if we didn't have the divine, irregardless of the authority, if we didn't have a higher being, then we wouldn't be here to even be authorized or have authority imposed upon us. So yes.
So you're saying yes for parental authority. You're a parent, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're saying yes for parental authority. You're saying yes
Mm-hmm.
for governmental authority. And you're saying yes for the other example. And now you're saying yes, we do need authority, which we could qualify as divine authority. Do you think if we leave the divine behind and we
Yeah.
concentrate on the three first examples that um, you've given, do you think that most people would agree that these are actually necessary in society,
Of
regardless
course.
of their
Mhm.
religious beliefs?
Of course. And the reason I
Yeah.
say that is because you get people who are still being parents and children still living with the parents. With the
Okay,
government, we still put governments in power. And with the education system, we send our children there knowing what to expect from the authority that they are going to give.
that's
And
very good.
also, and also to add to that, we need to look at what's the natural consequences when those authorities are not there. So when there isn't parental authority, what happens? And then in the cases where there's no governmental authority, where there's no one to kind of like regulate and overview, then what happens in those circumstances? And as Ruth said previously, we've got disorder, we've got anarchy. You know, without parental authority, you know, you have disobedience, and what would that do to the wider society at large? So the whole idea of authority is actually there to protect us and to ensure our safety and our happiness and our prosperity.
Okay, that's very good. You know, when I came in today, I came in not long ago. When I came in today, I found a letter, and you know those little brown envelopes that come from the government, and they have to do with
Yeah.
your car. And as I looked at it briefly, I saw written on it, "Tax it or lose it."
Mm.
Mm.
I thought, wow, somebody is telling me about my car that I bought, tax it or lose it.
Mm.
Mm.
That is interesting. And you know, that letter comes from the government. I just want you to know that I haven't run out of tax. This is
Mm.
just a warning because the tax is ending soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I've already been warned of authority that will take over, and in what way, if I don't do what they have decided that I need to do.
Mm.
So that clearly exemplifies that within the structures of human um, functions,
Reasoning.
human,
Yeah.
yeah, within the
Reasoning.
different structures, yes, that humans live in, there is a concept of authority. However, the problem begins when you shift that authority to a higher level and you come with the concept of divine authority. That's where the concept of authority becomes questionable. Are you with me?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
but, but I'd like to deal with this in a way that people will understand that it doesn't matter what you believe. That concept of divine authority is there and it has to be exercised. If you go with me to Mark chapter 4 and you read
Yeah.
from verse 37 for me to 41.
Okay. Mark chapter 4, 37 to 41. And there rose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him and said unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said unto them, Why are ye so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith? And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?
Okay. Have you seen the sea and the wind obey any human being?
Nope.
No.
Do we, in this example, see a demonstration of authority here?
Yes.
What kind of authority is that? Is it divine authority or human authority?
It's divine. It's divine because as they awoke him, he said, Peace. He said, Peace, be still. And then they responded and said, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? They were exceedingly
Pedro,
fearful. They were exceedingly fearful after that demonstration of authority over the
So these
elements.
people are fishermen.
Yeah.
They know you can talk all you want to any storm that arises in
Yeah.
any day, anywhere on the sea. You can talk all you want. It won't cook rice. Yeah? But here, this man stands up and says to the wind, Shut up, be
Yes.
quiet, and says to the waves and the sea, Enough. So when they ask, What manner of man is this? They are questioning his humanity. Are you with me?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they are actually exploring now something that is beyond humanity, something that is divine in
Yeah.
him. Now, if you were on that boat in the middle of the sea, in that storm, would you have appreciated divine authority?
yes.
Yes. Yes. Because it says
Okay.
here, and the boat was full. So the boat was full to bursting with, of course, either drowned in the
So if
boat or
you were
drowned in the sea.
if you were in that boat, yes,
Pedro, there's actually a question relating to this text, and it says, Is the word authority or order?
the concept we're dealing with, the concept of the wind and the sea obeying. For the wind and the sea to obey, there must be some kind of authority that is exercised over them. So it's not the word that we're dealing with. When you have authority, you order things to happen. Are you with me?
Yes.
You bid things to happen because you have the authority.
Yeah.
So it is the concept of authority behind the order that is given that we're looking at. And what we're saying is, in this case, had you been in this boat, because don't forget, we're dealing with why is it that God wants to control every aspect of our lives? He has to tell us what to do, what not to do, where to go, where not to go. Basically, he's a dictator and we don't like it. But then we understood that we as human beings, day in and day out, live within the very fabric
Mm.
of the concept of authority. And then we moved on to say the problem comes when we qualify that authority as divine authority. We're
That's
okay with
right.
the government. We're okay with the parents. We're okay with the teachers. We're okay with the judge. We're okay with all these people. But when it comes to divine authority, we have a problem. The police officer can tell us, you can't walk here, otherwise I'll do this and that to you, and we're okay with it. Even if we don't agree, we're going to do what he says. But when God says it, there is a problem. What I'm trying to show that there is an inconsistency, because if we understand authority as being part of the very fabric of our existence, there needs to be an understanding that it of its need at every level. Are you with me? And not just at the levels that we like to deal with it. Now, I'm saying if you had been in that boat, you would have enjoyed the authority, the divine authority of Jesus. Why? Because that would have saved you from drowning.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah? So divine authority is then a good thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If it saves lives.
At least in this case. So that's the first element. The second element is order. Not in the same, it's the same word, but not the same meaning as what the person asked. So we saw the first element was authority. We said we cannot dissociate ourselves from this concept. Now, the second element is order. Can we separate ourselves from this concept? Before you answer, let me ask you, if the sun in the universe, you know that bright star they say it is?
Yeah.
If the sun decided to come closer to the earth, what would happen?
It'd burn up.
Okay. If the sun decided to move a little bit away from the earth, what would happen?
It would be it would be destroyed, because the elements would be out of place now.
I think you would freeze to death.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
So there needs to be the exact order when we think about the celestial bodies, and particularly the sun. There needs to be order in what the sun is to do. It can't move closer or away, because that means life or death to us. Now, you may say, you know, we're not too keen on this astronomical explanation. Let's get something closer to Earth. All right. What would happen to you if you only eat the things you should not eat, you only drink the things you should not drink, and you never sleep? What would happen to you?
Well, you would eventually die of some kind of health complication.
But
is that on time or before your time?
Before your time. But it's interesting.
Time.
It's interesting you say that, because if you're eating the wrong thing, and I've seen people who are who are into health in a big way, and they've eaten the wrong thing, and they've slept too much, and you can have the opposite of the good, and it's still not good. because there's no order attached to it that is that's from divine origin.
So,
It's
so
got to be
basically,
balanced.
if you fool around with the laws of nature, and that can be the sun in the sky, or that can be simply health laws that regulate the body you did not bring in existence, the body
That's
you did
right.
not bring in this life. If you fool around with the laws that should regulate for the best this body that you did not make, I don't know of anyone who came into this world because they decided. I think we need to think about this. We're talking about divine
Yeah.
authority.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is that you are going to end up with a kind of problem in your hands that you will knock at any and every door to try have it sorted. And what is going to sort it is something that will allow you to reverse the situation and then go back to observing those very laws that you didn't care about.
That's right.
And because of that, put you in that situation. Are you with me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, let me ask this question. We're talking about divine authority. If we are so much in charge of ourselves, yeah? If we are so much in charge of the environment and of this world, talking about the concept of order, why don't we simply change the laws of nature instead of trying to do all kinds of things to reverse global warming and then continue to live out? If we are so much in charge, the simplest thing would have been, you know what? Let's change all the laws of nature. And this way, we will be able to do whatever we want and nothing will happen.
Yeah.
Would that not be simpler?
Yeah, because we
Pedro.
could just say, for
Why
example,
don't we do it then?
Pedro.
because we can't. There's no way of us engineering like plants to take on like 100 times more carbon dioxide or to reduce, you know, what happens naturally in regards to global warming.
Pedro.
You see,
Colin's
yes?
right. You made an excellent point there. And I loved how you brought this nature thing in. Nature is the only thing that man cannot interfere with. And life, you know, sorry, not life, because they can actually kill people and they can manipulate life, but they can't actually give life because the building blocks are always in nature. And that's why they know that they can't do this. So they will try and manipulate it as though they are doing it. But it takes that wisdom and knowledge and understanding to know that it's still under a divine order, a divine law, a divine authority. Otherwise, they would have done it.
That's exactly the point. And this is why it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter if you believe in God or not.
Yeah.
The moment we are in this crisis of, they say, global warming, and I'm not doubting this, if we were in charge, if we had the authority, and if even nature didn't have authority over us to some extent, we would have changed the laws of nature.
Yeah.
That's
But
right.
look at how much we're running around to comply.
Yes.
Does that give us an idea of who we really are?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
does that give us an idea of how much we can talk, but we cannot challenge some kind of authority and we cannot challenge some kind of order without being salted?
You know what, Pedro? You brought a thought to me there with the antediluvians. They thought they were big, they were bad, that they were above God.
I'm coming to that.
Okay, well, I'll leave that then.
Yeah,
But
we will touch on that.
it just shows how insignificant we really are in our bigness. We're saying that we can change this and do that, but outside of the divine law, it's just our vain imaginations, because God can
So
wipe us out.
so in
Wipe us out.
fact,
Yeah.
let's go to Revelation 11, verse 18, and then we will go right back to the idea you just mentioned.
Pedro, before I read that, Revelation 11:18, going back to this environment discussion that we're having, there's two comments here that relates to that. One of them says that's why we have seasons, but then there's another comment that says the world is partly in a mess due to mankind tampering with nature. The other half is due to our neglectfulness and abuse of our world.
And in both cases, we cannot change the laws of nature and make it happen the way we want. We have to
Exactly.
comply in both cases. And this is the point. Now, this brings us to the question as to who are we really? Do we have an authority that
Exactly.
allows us to challenge even nature? Even
Mm.
nature. We're not even talking yet
Exactly.
about God. We're talking about nature. Are you with me?
That's right. Yes.
So all of us, regardless of our belief system, whether we believe in God or not, we face
Yeah.
the reality that we cannot change the laws of nature, whether it is in
That's
our
right.
own bodies or in the environment. And if we try, we are in big
Big
trouble.
trouble. Yeah.
So if you read for me
Okay,
Revelation 11, verse 18.
Revelation 11:18 from the King James Version says, "And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants, the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth."
Okay. I want you to focus on the last part. And this brings now, we have a question of divine authority in this text and nature as we have just spoken. And this text here, Sister Ruth, is just echoing what you were saying when it says, I will destroy those who destroy the earth. This text has Genesis 6 in mind, the
Mm.
antediluvians. You see,
Yeah.
tampering with nature. We're not even talking about God, but tampering with nature brings consequences on our own daily lives. But what
Mm.
Yeah.
this text is actually saying is when nature is tempered with and we are subjected to the negative consequences of those actions that we have taken, actually the authority behind this is God.
It's God.
Because he says, you destroy. I mean, if you destroy, right now, we're talking about global warming and how we need to stop all the things we're doing because we're destroying the earth. But this text is saying the destruction of the earth that you observe is because of you challenging my authority over
That's right.
nature, and I allow this to take care of itself by giving you the consequences of your actions in return. And this is devastating. God is saying, I have authority on this earth, and whenever you challenge it, you are destroying yourself. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, absolutely.
If you read Proverbs chapter 22, verse 8 for me, please, and read that in different versions for me, please.
Okay. Colleen, if you got any other version, then that would be good. Or Simon, if you can
Yeah,
bring it up, that would be
I
great.
would prefer the KJV and the NLT.
Okay, the New Living Translation. Well, I've got the I won't say KGB then, the King James Version, and it says, "He that soweth iniquity shall reap vanity, and the rod of his anger shall fail." And you wanted
What
the
does
New
that
Living
mean?
Translation?
Yeah.
Somebody you can get the New Living Translation up?
The New Living Translation says, "Those who plant injustice will harvest disaster, and their reign of terror will come to an end." That's the New Living Translation.
Wow. What is this text saying? It's the same text you just read in two different versions. What is it saying?
Well, in the New Living Translation, it says, "Those who plant injustice will harvest disaster." So basically, it's saying that if you live a life of injustice, then the consequence, or what you get from that, or the result, or as the text says, the harvest, or what you reap from that is disaster.
Okay. So what we see here is there is a law of nature that is called planting and reaping. If I tell you, you know what, the other day I planted an apple tree, and 1 year later I harvested so many mangoes, will you believe me? From that same tree.
No, no,
And if I told you
no.
I planted some pumpkins, and then I reaped so many cucumbers, will you believe me?
Yes.
No.
You see, there is a law in nature that says
Yeah.
what you plant is what you reap. Who
Yeah.
on earth would not agree with this at a natural level? Who on earth would not agree with this?
Everyone would agree with it.
Unless you have left your senses, you have
Mm,
taken leave of your senses, all would agree with this. That law exists. Now, in this text, the image of that law is being used to illustrate a greater reality. Don't forget, your first question was about why God
yeah,
is
how fair is it that God wants us to yeah, how fair is it that God would not accept anything else than what he says for our lives?
this law of planting and harvesting is answering this.
Yeah.
There is a higher level to life than the physical level that we are in. And we can all admit that. Again,
Mm,
regardless of what we believe or we don't believe, we can all admit that reality is made of things that we cannot see, we cannot touch, we cannot feel, but that exist and interact with our lives. And this
yeah.
text is saying if you are planting injustice, let's say injustice is a tree, a seed, you are
Yes.
planting injustice, whatever that is in terms of actions, you are going to reap disaster. Is
Yes.
that something difficult to understand?
No, it's
No.
not, because we actually see that in society today. A lot of the disasters that we see happening, for example, looking at the financial system, for example, in regards to what's happening in relation to just generally in society, a lot of that has come about because of the injustices in the financial system, in regards to big corporation, in regards to consumerism, in regards to like how we organize society, and the injustices in society has produced the heartache, the pain, and the suffering that we see on on a day-to-day basis.
And
That's
and and
correct.
and and sometimes we are the perpetrators of what you've just said, Colleen. And I think what came to my mind when you were discussing that, Pedro, is that God's grace and His mercy gives us life daily, right? It wakes us up. We don't wake up ourselves. It wakes up every day for to do good or to do evil, and He knows which path we're going to choose to be under His authority, under the authority under the authority of man. Okay, and for me, as Colleen just mentioned, we've reaped the harvest that we have sown, which is under the
Now,
authority of man.
if
Yeah,
you take this, that
yeah. Like for
Go on,
example,
Pedro.
Pedro. Again, going back just quickly to the idea of the environment, like all. If you think about all the suffering that's come from what they say is happening in relation to global warming. If we look at the fires, how many houses and homes and lives have been destroyed? If we look at the floods, if we look at all the people that's been displaced, and all of that, that's the consequence of how we chose to live our lives and to deal with the environment up until now. So that's the consequence of a seed that's been sown for many years. And
now,
also to go beyond that, like the actual injustices in the system has actually led to the environmental crisis. Certain countries wanting to have certain amount of wealth, and the things that they've done to other countries, and the result of how they're trying to lead society has contributed to the crisis that's in the environment. So it's this whole idea of the injustice and how that leads to disaster.
okay. Now, what I want you to along with this understand is that most people agree in different parts of the world to say, look, if you're not acting right with nature, you're causing trouble to other people in other parts of the world. But once you have destroyed their livelihood, once you have destroyed in order to enrich yourself or live comfortably,
Yeah.
once you have destroyed what they have, where are they going to go?
Mm.
They will come right where you are, and they will saturate your place because everyone has the right to live. And as we said, everybody thinks that they have the right to pursue happiness however they understand happiness. So many wars, or the migration of people that we see going from poor places, called poor places, to rich places, is actually due to one kind of seed that has been planted and now is bearing fruit. So now your system, your equilibrium in whatever part of the world you live is threatened by the massive influx of people who have had everything destroyed, and they see you with everything they want. So where are they going to go? We can understand, the point I'm making is you can understand that at a simply logical, political, economical level. But the bigger reality, because we're talking about divine authority, is that if you do not pay attention to what God tells you, we've already seen if you don't pay attention to what nature tells you, this is what happens. But if you don't pay attention to what God tells you, who created nature,
That's right.
you are also in a situation where you are going to reap disaster. We began by saying we understand the concept of authority. We understand the concept of order. Where there is no authority, there is chaos. There is anarchy. There is all kinds of things. Where there is no order, it's the same. And now we see that if you plant this, you're not going to reap something else than what you're planting. So if you challenge the authority of God, you plant a seed of rebellion against God, what are you going to reap?
You
Go
just
with
desert.
me to Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 and 8 for me, please.
Galatians 6, 7 and 8 says, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting."
Basically, what the text is saying in its own context is when God has set a way for things to go, regardless of what the field is, in his authority, he has decided, because you didn't bring this world into existence, he did.
That's right.
Because you didn't bring yourself into existence, he
That's
did.
right.
Because you do not sustain this world by your power, he does. And we've seen it in the first text that we read about Jesus commanding the wind and the sea under
Yes.
divine authority. Because you cannot compete with him at this basic level, that then places you under him.
Absolutely.
And once you are under him, that means he's got some authority over you, that if you challenge, you are going to reap disaster. So in that sense, it's either his way
or the
highway. As a parent, I'm coming to the fair bit. As a parent, you've got a child who comes and goes in and out into your house, doing all kinds of things that you do not appreciate, has no regard for order, has no regard for authority. I'm just talking at a parental level. No regard for authority, no regard for you, no regard for your house. Is it fair for you to tell this child, it's either my way or the highway?
Very fair. Very, very fair.
Yes, it is.
This is the example that God has given us in our own lives to understand the higher reality of the relationship that he has with us. That's the reason why we call him Father. Are you with me? Because he exercises parental authority.
Yes.
Now, the way he exercises it is like in the story we read in Mark 4. When you are in a boat that is sinking because it's taking too much water because a storm is raging around you, he has the authority to save you by telling the wind and the sea, hush, be quiet. And you enjoy that, don't you?
Yes.
So
Yes,
why
you
is it
do.
now all of a sudden you want to challenge his authority when you want to do whatever you want to do in his world, which he created and which you're destroying? Why is it that you want to challenge his authority to say it's not fair for you to tell me what I can do and can't do
Yeah.
when
And
you
you
are
make
the
an
center of authority?
you make an interesting point there, because going back to the antediluvians, even when they were mocking and scoffing and everything like that, when the rain came down, they were trying to get into the ark, which meant that they knew not even the most wisest of their people could actually save them, even the most intelligent wanting to be saved himself, and yet they didn't even enter the ark.
That's why, sister, I'm paralleling this crisis that we have in the environment now and our
Yes.
inability to change the
Yes.
laws of
That's
nature
right.
in order to sort out our problem. We need to
That's right.
submit ourselves to
Yes.
the laws that we have there. This is the story of the
Yes.
antediluvian. So
Yes.
basically, I'm telling you, we are in a flood for the
Yes.
same reasons.
Yes.
And behind that is the authority of God that was challenged.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're trying to bring in all kinds of different things to try and work it in man's mindset. And it's still not working because we need the authority of God over it.
The best way would have been change the laws. Change the laws.
Yeah.
If you're in charge of nature, decide from now on, methane will not abuse the atmosphere. Decide from now on that carbon dioxide is not going to alter the ozone layer. Decide anything that is a problem now, just change the law. Change it. It's
Co-
easier
co-
and keep living your life.
It's easier for who? God,
We
not man.
cannot avoid
That's right.
the question of the authority of God at this simple level. We cannot avoid the question of the authority of God over our lives. That's all it means. So, whenever you challenge it in your own way, well, the law that He has put in that nature, according to His own authority, will sort you out. That's
Yeah,
simple.
absolutely. But I've got another question for you, Pedro. And the
Yes.
question is, are you ready for it? But that was a wonderful discourse set, and I hope the viewers gained a better understanding of authority and order under God and not man. Right. So, all right, we know that He's our creator, right? And we understand that. But does He need to control every aspect of our lives? And why does He do this, Pedro? It feels like we are no longer ourselves, or we're not free.
Okay, let me just take you. This is a very good question. Let me just take you to one text. That is Mark
Okay.
5, verses 1 to 13, please. And then I didn't know that time was running like this. We will close on this. Mark 5, that's
Okay.
just after Mark 4. The question of
Okay.
authority again.
Okay. Mark 5, I've got this. It says, and they came over into the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces, neither could any man tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the tombs, and in the tombs crying and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. And he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. Now there were there nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. There were about 2,000, and were choked in the sea. Wow.
So what we see here is the ultimate reality that permeates all aspects of our lives. Here, there is a relationship between that storm in Mark 4 and this experience of this man in Mark 5. The two stories are very closely connected, but I don't have time to go into this. However, what we see here is another level of life that requires that Jesus or God may actually control every aspect of our lives. Why? Because we exist within a context in which if he does not, then somebody else who doesn't like you
Absolutely.
will take over. Like in the case of this man, our experience may not be as dramatic as his. You notice in that story that there wasn't a thing anyone could do about him.
No.
If they tied him with chains, he would break them. If they tied him with rope, he would break them. And he was a terror in the community until
He met.
Jesus came with divine authority. Jesus did not speak to him, did he?
No.
Jesus spoke to the forces
That's right.
that kept him in that situation.
Yes, he did.
The demons. You see, today, many people think, oh, somebody is just under the influence of drugs and that person went on to do this, that, and the other. Oh, somebody is just under the influence of alcohol and went out and did this, that, and the other. But the reality is, there is more than the drugs.
Yes.
There is more than the alcohols. There is in this world a different level that is a spiritual level. And it is within that context that we exist. And in God's plan for humanity, all he wants in every aspect of man's life is that he may prosper, that he may live a fulfilled life, that he may have a life that is meaningful. Now, how many people feel, in spite of whatever they have achieved in life, How many feel that they are actually have actually lived a purposeful and meaningful life?
Not many.
Very, very, very few. How do
Hmm.
I know that? Just check. Just check what happens at every layer of society with people taking antidepressant, drinking alcohol to forget their hurts and their pains,
Yeah.
committing suicide, doing all kinds of things that abuse themselves and abuse others. You heard about this man not long ago who abused more than 100 different corpses, sexually
Wow.
Yes.
abused, and among those, and he was filming himself. This guy was a Mr. Normal in society. That's how they presented him. He had a job, he had everything, and he would kill in order to rape. And then he would go to a mortuary, to a morgue, and then rape corpses.
Yes.
And they said among the people he did that to, there was a woman who was close to 100 years, and there was a child who was about 8 or 9, I can't remember. Do you understand that there is a reality in this life that permeates our own, the one we see, we touch, we smell, and interact with at a physical level that is much higher than us? And that
Yes.
reality involves powers that are there for destruction, your destruction. So when God tells you, you know what? Since you did not create yourself, or since you are in this room and you don't even know what's happening in the next room, and since
Hmm.
I created this world and I know what is happening in the invisible, I'm going to tell you how to live your life best.
Yeah.
Our reaction to this is, whoa, where is my freedom?
Mm.
Why can't I choose to do the things I want to do? Well, God knows that if it doesn't lead you into the right path, you by default will be on the wrong one, and that one will destroy you. Therefore, every
Yeah.
aspect of your life has to be under his control for you to be fulfilled, and out of reach of those powers like this man. And you know what? This is called a possessed man.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we were to run statistics as to how many possessed people are walking around just in the town where we are, how would we do that?
I don't think we'll be
Yeah.
able to.
But I'll tell you, but I'll tell you, there is a way. Let's just go to the hospital and see how many are sick and dying. Let's go to the morgue and see how many are in the refrigerators. Let's go to the psychiatric wards and see how many are on treatments. Let's go to the homes and see how many dysfunctional families exist. Let's go to the school and count how many children are disturbed in their minds. And we can go on, and that's how we will find out.
And
And
the
we will
prisons,
find out. We
even
will
the
also
prisons.
find out. And the prisons, although most of them are innocent in there, but we will find out.
But Pedro, you made a good point there about this man, because that man that raped those, it was just a normal, and how many people have gone under the radar until they're actually caught, and then we know that these people are mad. But one thing I noticed, and it was in the comments as well, that even the demons knew that the element and nature was not subjected to them. Because it was saying here in verse 12, 5:12 of Mark, and all the devils besought him, saying, send us into the swine that we may enter them. They didn't want to be there just wandering around. Even they knew that they had to ask permission of their creator, which is Jesus, because that he created everything in heaven and on earth. And they knew who was really in authority. And they asked him, please don't do this to us. But yet they possessed the man.
And
I'm telling you,
beyond that,
we don't know the God we're dealing with, you know.
and beyond that, I want you to
Yeah.
notice this, because you're asking, okay, he is our creator, but why does he need to control over our lives? I dare you to find in the scriptures or in history where God has behaved against your interest, where God has exercised his authority to do to you what these demons have done to this man. I dare
That's right.
you to find, like in this story, you can see actually that God's authority is about health, it's about freedom, it's about fulfillment, it's not about destruction. And in that story, he actually releases this man. Who kept
Yes.
him?
The
The
demons.
demons kept him.
Yeah.
And when he released this man from the demons, what good action the demons did?
No.
They went on to do the only thing they know how to do. They went and drowned a couple of thousands of pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still
Are
evil.
you with me?
Yeah.
So, when you're talking about the authority of God, this is what you're talking about. Our last text, if you go to for me to John chapter 10, verses 9 to 13, when you are talking about the authority of God, when you're talking about God's way or the highway, is it fair? This is what
Yeah.
you're talking about. Read the text for
Wow.
me,
Power.
please.
A powerful study. Powerful.
So John 10:9, and it says in the King James Version, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pastures.
To 13.
Shall I? The
Yeah.
thief cometh. The thief cometh not to for to steal, but to kill and to destroy. And I come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. But he that is an hireling, and not the shepherd, whose own sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep, and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. The hireling fleeth, because he is an hireling, and careth not for the sheep. Yes.
Basically, if you're not taking the authority of Jesus on board,
Yeah.
you are with a mercenary. Somebody, whenever trouble comes, will leave you in your mess to drown and die. But
Yeah.
if you take the authority of Jesus, who is the ultimate authority, the door, the way, the life, the truth, if you take his authority and you allow his authority to permeate all the aspects of your life,
Yeah.
you
You're
cannot
right.
come up with the idea that it's unfair. It would be unfair on Jesus that you live so well.
That's right.
Because because
Yeah.
because as the shepherd, he will be facing all the dangers so that you can be secure. He will be taking all the blows so that you can be fine. He will be doing all the work so that you can rest. That's how the authority of God place in anyone's life who accepts it fully.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pedro. And viewers, I hope you enjoyed this study today. And it's been an amazing study. Please go back and listen to it and share it with your friends, your family, your neighbors, whoever will need to understand this. And always remember that this is where everything is found for life or authority. It's, as somebody said to me, that I always say, it's the best instruction before leaving Earth. And as you can see, those two, the end bits of it is actually, where am I now? It's rubbing off, but it's not rubbed out of my heart. Okay, so thank you for that, Pedro. And I pray that the good Lord God will bless you as you endeavor to make him, your ultimate authority and not man. So have a safe week. Take care. God bless. Until we see you for another wonderful study with the biblical perspective. Thank you.